And good afternoon. June is Pride Month, a time to celebrate the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender in our community. And that looks completely different this year, especially with Pride Fest canceled in Milwaukee. June was chosen as Pride Month nationwide to commemorate the Stonewall riots in New York that occurred in 1969 after police raided the Stonewall Bar, and the battle for the rights of all in the LGBTQ community began. In Milwaukee, members of the LGBTQ community have been proudly fighting for equality over half a century. So documenting that history can be a daunting task, but someone has to do it so that it can be passed on from generation to generation. Michail Takach joins us now to help walk us through some of this history. Thank you, Michail, for joining us. We know now that you live in California, but you are originally from the Milwaukee area.
Very true. Thank you for welcoming me today.
All right, so how have you documented this history?
So the history of LGBT people is really a complex one because it's not something that's taught in schools. It's not something that's taught by families. It's not really carried on from generation to generation. For most LGBTQ people, their history begins when they identify as part of the community. And that's sometimes a shame because there's a rich history and heritage going back centuries in Milwaukee, even 100 years, that is often overlooked. Earlier, you had mentioned June as being LGBT Pride Month because of the Stonewall riots. Milwaukee actually had an uprising 8 years before the Stonewall riots that really we see as the starting point of the LGBT Pride movement in Wisconsin. When some sailors were dared to invade a gay bar and to make trouble for its patrons, on August 5th, 1961, a queer person of color fought back and reclaimed the bar for the population, which was really quite a thing at the time, and really spoke to the fact that not only were there other gay people in Milwaukee for a population that was told that they were the only ones like themselves and that they had nothing to be proud of or no community to speak of, but that they were gathering in numbers and were actually willing to defend their spaces and their rights.
So where would Milwaukee be in the forefront? Was it on this movement? We had the Pride Parade in 1971. We have Pride Fest starting back to 1994. Has Milwaukee been behind on this movement or sort of leading the way?
I would say for a city of our size, the Pride movement was right on track. After the Stonewall uprising of 1969, organizations began to form in Milwaukee, that were really pushing for civil rights in a variety of different ways. Some were very adamant and very militant, such as the Gay Liberation Front. Others were more moderate and more conservative, such as the Gay People's Union. The Gay People's Union really pushed through a lot of things throughout the 1970s that were firsts for Wisconsin, and in some cases, first for the Midwest. The first community center, the first STD clinic, the first hotline for LGBT people to reach out and talk to somebody who understood their problems.
And
I'm really just a lot of things way ahead of their time.
Michail, if we could fast forward to 2020, right? The march with Pride for the Black Lives Movement, and then RuPaul's Drag Race winner from Milwaukee.
Exactly. So we've come a long way. But really the Pride Fest that we know today would be celebrating its 33rd year this year. That isn't to say that that is the whole history of Pride in Wisconsin, but it is one that is fascinating. I mean, if you think about Pride Fest beginning as a march and rally of 1,000 people that met in Cathedral Square, where the Rainbow Crosswalks today commemorates that march and that passion, those people were angry. They were mad. They wanted to be heard. They wanted to be seen. And in many ways, the March with Pride for Black Lives Matter this year is more in the spirit of the early days of Pride than any Pride Fest in many, many, many years.
Well, Michail, we appreciate you taking time to share some of the history here in Milwaukee. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And we do have a link to the Wisconsin LGBTQ History Project on our website, tmj4.com. You can find it in the links section. There you will also find a link to Michail's book, LGBT Milwaukee.